Good morning, writers. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, and I'd like to welcome you to our second week of online learning. Today, we're going to be looking at the kinds of evidence a research writer might include in their article and why it's important for us to do that. So, let's first take a look at the notes that I provided for you. So, it's the types of evidence that you might include in your article. Research writers are deliberate in varying the types of evidence they use about a topic. Varying the evidence gives your audience many different ways to connect with your message. So let's just take a look really quick at the different kinds, and then I'll show you how I was able to go back into my notes and when I had to do some thinking to find some of this evidence. So the different kinds of evidence are facts, details, examples, quotes, referring to earlier parts of your article or your writing piece. You raise questions about your message and you consider what would happen if someone doesn't hear your message. How does all this fit together and why is this information important? Now, let me just take you through the other. So here are my examples of exactly what I would have included or what I will include in my research piece. And I also told you where you could find those things. So let's go back up to the top for a second. So facts, for instance, you would find from your notes your article, details from your notes your article, examples from your notes your article, and quotes from your notes in your article. Now, let's just take a look at the pictures that I took of where I found it. So, a fact is information about your text. The information that I included was that greenhouse gas that's roughly 25 times more powerful at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide, which is produced by burning fossil fuels. So, if you look at my evidence that I included rotting food emits methane gas, which is 25 more percent more powerful than the carbon dioxide emitted during the burning of fossil fuels. The next thing is details, and this is also taken from your notes. And I have one of the causes of food waste is when consumers purchase more food than they need, ultimately throwing away the excess. Now, again, let's go to the next picture I took of where I found that information in my notes. Here, American consumers throw away 25% of all purchased food, which causes, rotting food to emit methane gas, which is a bad thing for our environment. Here, I have an example. So, one way consumers could cut down on food waste would be to buy only what they will use. So, let's go back to my pictures here. Here's my example. So, causes of food waste and then making a change. Consumers. Changing behavior is paramount. Making conscious decisions to purchase what we to buy what we will eat and to store leftovers. So that's where I got that information from. Quotes, also from our notes. Okay, so let's go back and look at some quotes here. It says Project Drawdown models showing that worldwide implementation of composting can reduce emissions by 2.3 billion tons over the next 30 years. So, how I would write it or use it in my paper would be this. Let's just move this up a little bit because it's not letting me. Experts say that worldwide implementation of composting can reduce emissions by 2.3 billion tons over the next 30 years. So I just wanted to show you that we vary the kinds of ways that we provide information for our writers so that they can connect to it in some way. Sometimes just including a fact might not be enough, but if I give an example of how something is done or how something is important, really resonates with your readers. Now, the other types of evidence are more from your thinking, okay? More about what you're thinking. So, to connect all of our article together, sometimes it's important to refer to earlier parts of the writing that you've done. So, earlier we discussed the role the consumer plays in creating food waste. Experts are now offering some solutions to the problem. Okay, so that should be a period. Um, Now, for your message to be really clear, sometimes you have to address it in a different way. Instead of just restating it, sometimes you have to ask a question about what if your message is not heard, or what are you thinking about your message? So let's raise a question. What would happen if climate change concerns caused by food waste are not taken seriously? That's something that will get your audience thinking about your message and why it's important to pay attention to that message. Another way to do that would be, what would happen if your message is not heard? Well, let's consider the possibilities of consumers not changing their behaviors towards food waste. What would happen? It goes back to my message that our behavior about food waste needs to change in order to stop the climate change that it is creating. Okay. How does this information all fit together? Well, your audience needs to understand that all the different subtopics that you've included in your article are really important, and they all tie together in some way. So you need to kind of put a statement in there, or you don't have to, but you can choose to. This information explains the various ways purchasers, consumers, and producers contribute to the cause of food waste, especially since we talked about three different ways. We talked about consumers, we talked about farmers, we talked about restaurants, we talked about countries having technology and not having technology. So it's important that they understand how that all fits together. Another thing you might want to include is why this information is important, and this also goes back to your message. So, what I've included here is, it is important because the decisions we all make every day on the food we purchase, produce, and consume is the single most important contribution an individual could make to changing climate change. Okay, so let's go back to our do now. We looked at the different kinds of evidence that a researcher might include in their articles and why it is important. I also gave you in the video some ways to find most of them in your notes or in your articles. I showed you how I did that in order to get that information. And I've also given you some examples of how I did it in my own work. So today, boys and girls, what I want you to do is to look at your own evidence in your own writing and determine what other types of evidence could you include that will resonate with your audience, that will make them understand your message more clearly, and to make your writing precise and comprehensive, and to really make your audience really understand that message. Okay, if you have any questions, again, always, as always, please email me and I will be happy to get back to you. If we need to do a conference, that would be awesome also. I would love to see your little faces. So have a great day and happy writing.